Hi, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life on Dr. T TV. I'm Dr. T, and this is the place where emotionally sensitive people get the emotional tools they need to succeed. With me today is an amazing guest who's going to give you some really important tools for having a really elevated life, and I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. With us is Shauna, and Shauna's last name is Shauna Harris. I'm reading her bio off of my phone today. And Shauna is a clinical sexologist. So right off the bat, we know we're in good hands. She's a relationship specialist and a best-selling author. She's the founder of Explore Intimacy, a results-based coaching practice. And Shauna utilizes her private coaching practice to guide couples through their relationship journey. She's passionate about keeping couples and families together. And Shauna also helps to empower young adults through human sexuality education, which enables them to make the most knowledgeable and healthy decisions. Through private sessions, workshops, writing articles, and videos, Shauna is passionate about encouraging and supporting healthy families and intimate relationships. And this is where we are very, very aligned, Shauna. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Very nice to have you on. And let's get started by having you share with us about your journey that really led you to be doing such important work in this world where we're giving people the education and the awarenesses that they need to really live a healthy life on every level. So how did you end up, being in this position and making this your passion?
My journey has been a long one, but it's been an amazing one. So when I was a teeny muffin, I always wanted to be a teacher. So I went that route, and I taught primarily fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. And my favorite thing to teach was human sexuality because no other teacher wanted to teach it.
Of course.
And it was such a great experience because they got rid of all the desks, and it wasn't like the typical classroom experience.
Right.
And kids were just able to be themselves. It was a safe place, and they were able to ask questions that they weren't knowledgeable on, or that they had, that they were interested in or curious about, and maybe they had heard on the playground and they wanted to have some knowledge behind it or some actual facts behind it. So I just loved it, loved it, loved it.
Wow.
And then I became a mama. And so I took time off teaching, and, kids grow like the speed of light. So I started thinking, as my kids were getting older, what is it that would be super fulfilling to me? And I came up with the idea of obviously helping people because the education career path is obviously very much helping people. And I wanted to sort of go beyond that. And how could I do that to the best of my ability? And I sort of looped back to the human sexuality, and I'm like, oh, I love that, because the curriculum is going away every year, it seems. And it's just so sad to me, because it's such a base of foundation that everybody needs to build on with their relationships, and all of the experience and the factual knowledge that like everybody needs going forward to have a healthy life. And so I initially I went back to school and I got my life coaching certificate, and then I started doing that, and I loved it, but I wasn't in love with it. So I thought I needed to go a step further. And so I went back and I did some more schooling in the human sexuality genre. And I finished my schooling in that. And here I am, a clinical sexologist. And I think the whole breeding, or the whole little seed that was planted that sort of made me want to propel my career a bit further in this area was I got married in 1996, and he was my best friend. I met him when I was 17. So I mean, I didn't really have a lot of experience with men, so to speak, because my dad left when I was younger, and so it was just my sister, my mom, and myself. And so I met him when I was 17. I got married, had babies. We then moved from Canada to the United States. And that we got really close as a family, but it put a lot of pressure on us, the external part of our family, because we didn't have any family. We didn't have any support system. And so mental illness runs quite deep in my ex-husband's family. And I started noticing little things, little red flags. And so I would try to bring it up, and it just didn't fly. That then went on, year after year, and it went into, or I guess it exploded into an abusive relationship, of which I knew that I had to get out of. But I grew up in the church, and divorce is not an option. And I just thought, like, what am I going to do? And I was at a Bible study for women of domestic violence. And I had a great mentor in there that just said, Shauna, like, you have some pretty big choices to make. And one of them is, like, do you want to live? And I'm like, wow, that's a super huge kick in the pants.
That's keeping it real. Yeah.
Yes, wow. Of course. And, my kiddos are everything to me. So I needed that kick in the pants, because I thought I could do it all myself. I can solve this problem. I can do this myself. And, like in my book, I talk about, we need the community. We need support. And I wasn't doing that at all. So I finally reached out to my family and let them know, what I was going through and such. And everyone, of course, was shocked, because I had the white picket fence. And so that just, that got the ball rolling. And here I am on the flip side. And it is my mission, it is my passion to get couples before it goes too far, because there are solutions. And it's not a big, huge switch. It's tiny little, teeny tiny things you do every day that enable you to have a healthy relationship. And if I can help in any way, I'm here for it. And I just want to serve. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Shauna, I really relate to so many things that you're sharing. And I just love, hearing the journey and what each piece brought you to, and how you're using your life in purpose, right? And how important that is, because, as a fellow leader who just believes that, we've got to have our families stay together. We've got to have them come together in a healthy way, grow together in a healthy way. And, it connects back to what you're talking about when you were teaching in school, that even though there's an education system, it's fairly limited what we really learn about being a human being, and about the emotional process, the relational process, and of course the sexual process, which is so fascinating to me, because the very way that life is created, right, is this thing that we pretend is like this mystery, or it's this shameful thing. And then I take that, I really add on to that, in that our whole process of being a person, all the way in which our emotions are driving everything, and we don't understand them fully. And there's so many aspects to being a person that are somehow shrouded in mystery, and creating all these, right. And creating all, and that's just a pattern of, like, we don't talk about things because we're just not as comfortable talking about it. And it's creating generations and generations of damage, because we just don't know what we're doing. And so it's really big work that you're doing to be able to focus and specialize in an area that is really essential, and where still people are so uncomfortable. And I know what that's like, because, like, emotions, everybody wants to run away, and really everybody wants to have this fabulous life that entails a great emotional life and a great relational and sexual life. So I know what goes into it, and I love that you are holding this space in the world and really leading it. It's really important.
Thank you. I'm enjoying every bit of it so far.
Yeah. So the whole process of, like, keeping families together and having families, or just really, like you talk about, having again, I relate, like, intervening right before stuff go, like, talk to us about, give us a sense of, like, how you work with people and how that happens, like what goes down, and how it all works out for everyone.
Okay. So I obviously first am approached by a person or a couple. I then do some intake forms and sort of see where they're at. And then I bring them in and we create a plan, because I very, very much believe that if you do not have a plan, nobody knows what to do. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if you get hit with a tornado in your city and you are not prepared for it, people panic. Same thing in a relationship. If something happens, and it could be the very tiniest, teeniest thing that sets somebody off or pushes a button. If you don't know what to do, or you don't know how to respond, then you set yourself up for failure. So I very much believe that having a plan is super, super important, because I want every single solitary couple to succeed. And people, when they come in, they have an end goal in mind. And I think that's super, super important, because you want a finish line. But I look at that and I appreciate that and I respect it, but I put it away. Because that's where we want to go, but that's not where I want to focus. So I focus on the tiny, teeny wins every single day that you can do to ensure that your relationship is going in a healthy direction. So it depends on what they're coming in for. A lot of my couples come in because their main complaint or their pain point is, my sex life is boring, or my sex life stinks. And it's very, very funny, because when you start pulling back the little pieces of the onion, it has to do with their sex life, but there's so much more. They need to look at the way they're communicating with each other, because communication is the glue. And what I had to learn in the past, however many years that I've been going through my journey, is that I was born on the mountain that you need to do it yourself, and you don't need any help, and do not be vulnerable. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And that is my one of my first things to speak about with my couples, is that vulnerability. When I learned to just let go and just like release the shield, stomp on it, throw it in the fire, whatever you need to do to just toss it, you get so much more out of life. And it's so courageous for one to be vulnerable. And it was such a turning point for me when I just allowed, like, it was so tightly shut in my world, and I was never vulnerable, because it was my defense mechanism. I did not want to be hurt. I did not want to be like, there's no way that anybody's hurting me, because I am like a tight-lipped, box with close with a lid and a lock. And I just, so we work on vulnerability, because that is absolutely huge. And conflict resolution is huge, because people tend to get in patterns. So, everything we do when we wake up is a pattern. The way we get out of bed, brush our teeth, brush our hair, eat, like, we do the same thing almost every single solitary day. And our mind is, we just live in the subconscious mind all the time. And if you can snap yourself out of it when you get triggered, or when you start to freak out, you can align yourself with the present and think, okay, I have the ability right now to react, because I'm really angry with you, and in the past, I have done whatever, yelled, slammed the door, whatever. But once, I take them through a little bit of training, I have 6 seconds sort of in my brain to like ground myself, stay in the present, and think, okay, which fork prong am I going down? Am I going down the old, or am I going down the new? And once, obviously, practice makes perfect, and you start to, choose the healthy way a little bit more every time you practice, because it's challenging when you've done the same thing over and over.
You're conditioned for it. Yeah.
You're so conditioned for it. So when we break that pattern and we have a plan, like I spoke of before, here are some options that you could do, as opposed to what you have been doing. Just tell me how it works. And, some things work for different people. So maybe here's a couple options to try. Maybe we do some role playing or whatever. And I find that people learn, oh my gosh, like, instead of reacting how I always did, and the cycle continues every single time we fight, whether it be about the coffee maker, the socks you left on the floor, the toilet seat up, like, it doesn't really matter what you're arguing about. Well, I want sex 5 times a week. You only want it once. It doesn't matter what we're talking or discussing about. It matters how we respond. And there's such a huge difference in the way we react, or if we choose to respond. And I just like to take my couples to, let's think of how we can respond, because when we enter a conflict, with the intent to win, you've already lost.
You've lost, yeah.
So if you enter it with vulnerability, with this is my best friend. I want us both to come out of here feeling loved and heard, appreciated. How can we get there? And so that's sort of the plan that we come up with that works for couples, and like every couple's different.
Yeah.
So
this sounds so good. I love, all my years of doing this work and helping people through emotional training. I relate so much to the concept of having a plan, right? Because everywhere else in life, we have a plan, but somehow in the rest of the therapeutic process, it's like, let's just come in and see what happens, and, all of this stuff. And when you have a sense of exactly where people want to end up, then it sounds like what you're doing, really, again, I really relate to this very much, is making sure that all the steps along the way are intentional, so that instead of doing these same reaction patterns, people are doing, sounds like more, you're bringing, it's the little things that count in each moment, so that you're choosing to go in the direction that gives everybody the intentions that they want. And I love what you're saying about, like, if there is a try to win strategy, it automatically includes somebody's losing strategy. And now you have a loser in the situation. And that's not what anybody was going for.
And, the winner might be all puffed up and their ego might be elevated for a bit. But you turn around and see your partner and they're just defeated and sad and rejected or what have you. That's a fleeting
It's not sexy. Right.
No,
it's not sexy. And I love what you're saying about vulnerability. And it's so amazing, what you were conditioned for about don't do this. And just all of this crazy emotional conditioning. And when I track a lot of the patterns and a lot of the so-called strategies and recommendations we are all given, when you just check them for whether or not they're going to actually get you what you want, they make zero sense. Like, do it all yourself. If I just pulled out of, like, if I take myself out of that character or that story, it's like, where does that make any sense? None of it. And then don't be vulnerable. I think of that one. And I when you're talking about this, I think, isn't it crazy that we even have to call being honest vulnerable rather than just being honest and saying, here's what I'm noticing, here's what's occurring, here's what I want to happen. And that ultimately that message to not be vulnerable is a message ultimately to lie and then expect yourself to have a good life. Right? This just makes no sense. So I love what you're bringing forth and how you made that shift in helping people just speak the truth about what they want and get comfortable with the truth. So ultimately this doesn't need to feel like vulnerability, because I can see how all of this stuff is getting in the way of a really healthy sexuality and relationship. And one of the greatest things that people get to do with each other.
Enjoy each other and each other's bodies. I just think, I also think that so many times we come into a situation where we assume. And I think assumptions are such deal breakers, and they're such relationship killers, and they are so not getting you any closer to having a great sex life at all. And even the teeniest assumptions lead to, like, your brain just starts going on a roller coaster, and it's like, oh my gosh, if that happened, then they did this, then they did this. Whoa, slow down. And you know what? Just ask questions. Like, get the conversation rolling. You know what, honey, like, I noticed this today. Am I just, is this real or am I just making this up? And then they can clear it up for you. Bam, it's over. And then you're not going through this cycle of, oh my gosh, if this happened and this happened, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And then it just gets into such a vicious cycle where if the first inkling you get of, oh, that didn't seem right, ask a question.
Got it.
So it just to me, it eliminates so much mess up there, and we've already got so much going on in our minds and in our brains. It just needs to just rest.
It's good. It's good. It's this is the opposite of being reactive, right? This is about being connected. You're talking about being grounded. This is about being intentional. And I really, as you're talking about this, I see how much people are in a reactive state throughout their life, right? And what I notice is the more emotionally sensitive somebody is, the more they pick up on everything in the environment, and then the reactivity runs away with itself, just like you're describing.
Absolutely.
And really, if we just track it, you're actually completely and totally safe in this moment, and you do get to choose, and you do get to create. And it's a lot more simple than people realize it is. But just thinking about the messages that you got, and I know the messages that so many people still get, we're really changing that paradigm, because the fix it yourself, don't talk about it, don't, do anything, just follow this track that we followed in 1975. Just us and what we do in the world is like the example of how we're saying, no, we're going to literally talk about this. And people are coming and working with you and saying, we're going to actually work on a relationship. And generations ago, nobody's going to talk about their sex life, but now they're literally saying, I want this sex life, and I'm working with somebody who is an expert on that. And that, to me, is just a mind-blowing, amazing paradigm shift that's happening. It's pretty phenomenal.
It is pretty phenomenal. And I also think that a lot of us get conditioned to think that sex just happens in the bedroom. Right. And I think, no, honey. Like, the minute your toe hits the floor, that's when the foreplay begins.
Yeah.
And so, like, just everything you do is the choice. And I always say to my couples, everything that comes out of your mouth, every action that you take towards your partner either propels you towards your goal, or it takes you completely the opposite way. Yeah. You honestly have to be so intentional. And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, I have to walk on eggshells. No, but I think when you come from a place of love, and what can I bring to this situation that makes it better, as opposed to what can I get out of it? Where a lot of people, they come from a place of, it's just a tiny tweak that you need to make in your perspective. But what can I bring this to the situation that makes it better? And again, they're just the tiniest little things that you can do every day. And every day you make a choice. Like, if for those of us who are in a long-term relationship, short-term marriage, whatever, like, when you wake up every day, you have a choice to love that person and love that every fiber of their being. Or you can say, not having you today. Like, I just, like, you totally repel me today. I'm not, like, you disgust me today. And like, how's that going to work out for you? And how is that going to take your relationship to a place of safety and vulnerability and trust and intimacy, all of those feelings, trust and vulnerability, connection, feeling, did I say safe and being heard? All of those breed intimacy. And so when you want to feel intimate with your partner, you just don't like, let's go, honey, let's hop in a sack. No, like, there's so much more that goes into it. Like, I often discuss with my male clients, it's a lot easier for some, not all, to, like, honey, we've got 5 minutes, let's go. And like, they're ready to go. Yeah. And that's great, because they're able to turn off their business brain, their dad brain, their whatever other brain they can toss them. But for the most part, women, there's like a warm-up phase. Like, the men are microwaves, the women are like ovens. We need to be preheated. And I'm not just talking about foreplay. Yeah. I'm talking about, for a woman to be even turned on, she needs to feel connected. And how does a woman feel connected? She needs to feel loved. She needs to feel trusted, or she needs to feel like she's trusting you. She needs to feel that every part of her is safe to move forward, to even want to be turned on.
This is good. Yeah. What I'm hearing, Shauna, is, that ultimately the whole pattern of what's going on is creating all of your outcomes. So the pattern of love, the pattern of trust, like, where there's all these other things, there's mistrust, there's frustration, there's irritation, impatience. The reality is, we can either be impacted by just these feelings that show up, or we get to choose them. We get to say, how do I want to feel? Keep conditioning that. Right. And then ultimately that just leads you to more and more of what you want. And without that, this is like physics. If you are in a mode of disconnect or frustration or nitpicking or nagging or any of this stuff, you're right, it just doesn't add up to whatever these things are that you really want. And I see these things just as they're just patterns that got learned and they've been around for generations. And really, like, we're at a stage of life where we're really seeing this in our culture where to recognize how much we get to choose how we feel and what we want to embody. It's pretty phenomenal.
Right. And I also think, like, some people get so frustrated because they're like, it's hard to get out of a pattern. It's hard. Even that mental state, it's so hard. I can't do it. I can't. Okay. I understand that it's hard because, trust me, I've been there. But what ultimately do you want? Do you want somebody just to, like, look at you from across the room and you're like, yeah, it's happening? Or do you want, like, there's so many, like, you can choose, like, positivity breeds positivity. You can look over you know, I was looking at my husband last night, and he's just such a kind, and he has taught me how to be silly, which I think is so important.
Yeah.
And just to laugh and just to be myself. And it doesn't matter what happens. Like, we're going to figure it out together. So I was just looking at him last night, and I was thinking about a client that I have right now and the struggles that they're having. And I could look at him and say, you know what? Like, the fact that you didn't wash that pot over in the sink kind of annoys me. And that thought might lead to another one. You know, you left the socks on the floor today, and also, like, you said you were going to take the garbage out. You didn't do that. And then my mind keeps going and going and going. Or else I could look over and say, you know what, like, the way you make me feel and that little look you just gave me, and I just love you so much, and I can't believe that the life we're creating, and, like, just those little thoughts breed more of those little thoughts, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. So you choose where your mind goes.
It's so good
about the socks, but you know what? Like, I say something and move on. Like, hey, honey, how about we do a clean sweep and get the laundry going? Because I just don't feel like at ease going to bed at night when I have a mess. Would you mind helping me? He's no problem when I come at it like that. Like, we're a team.
This is so good, Shauna, because what you're talking about, and this is something we very much focus on in our company with emotional training, is that we are ultimately conditioned as a society for the negative paradigm. And the negative paradigm is what isn't. And people may not realize it, and I hope that people watching today will start to understand that there is a whole way in which humans see what isn't happening. They see what you haven't done, what isn't there. They see scarcity. They see people being mean. And while that can be a reality, it is a reality because that's a conditioned reality. It is the negative version of existence. And the flip side is the positive form. You can literally make this pattern shift. It's a big paradigm shift to say what is. So what is I love that what you just described. You're my man, you're my partner, we're in this together, all these loving things. And I can go ahead and add the pot piece in there and say, and honey, please wash the pot. And I can also go wash the pot and also just move on and enjoy my life rather than being the powerless victim of the unwashed pot, you know, which again isn't giving me the life that I want. And it's a really powerful paradigm shift, because when you make a shift that you can only see what is rather than what isn't, you have a whole different reality you are in. And it is just a matter of emotional conditioning. And I love Shauna. I mean, this is what, you know, we're really aligned in this. And it's a dramatic difference. I mean, even as you were describing a bit of the pot, your like face went, you know, for just a split second when you said it. And when you started to talk about your husband and how, you know, all these other things about him, you literally looked like the happiest version of yourself. That's the truth of how it's working. Yeah.
You know, it's funny you said I could go wash the pot, because I know it's funny because we let the little things be big.
Yeah.
And so that pot last night, I thought, yeah, I've got a couple minutes, and the pot's bugging me. It's not bugging him.
Isn't that fun? Yeah.
But I go back to my kid self and I think, my mom would say, don't wash that stinking pot. You teach him to wash. He washes his own pot. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm washing the pot. And you know what I got after washing the pot? so relieved that the pot was washed because I don't like any dirty dishes in the sink.
Yeah.
But also he came over and grabbed me and said, "Thanks so much for helping me in the kitchen. I really, really appreciate it." Because I was busy and I just forgot about it. I'm sorry. And I'm like, you don't need to be sorry. Like, we're in this together.
It's so good. You're creating your reality. And, you know, as much as we love our family members and our friends and we love all the messages, there's so much content in the world. If something isn't giving you the outcome that you want and putting you in some state of powerless victim, or is it, you know, even think about how people, it sounds like you made a quick shift. And I love this example. We've all been here, right? We're like, you might have thought about that pot for 20 minutes. Now 20 freaking minutes of your life has gone by. And this is going on all the time when it's either saying, you know, oh, honey, go ahead and do the pot and let's go up to bed, or I'm going to do it. Or I may even say, I'm going to leave it. I'm focusing on something else. And how, like you keep saying, it's the power of choice and how amazing and liberating it is, because we can make little things big, or we can make anything big that we want. And why not make the things that we really want bigger, and the things that we don't, that are small, why not leave them? You know, why not just take care of them in a way that we get to move on to the fun stuff? So I'm loving these examples.
And I just think, like, to take that just a teeny step further, I love what you just said. But that little snuggle that I got after and that appreciation that I felt, yeah. I wouldn't have had that if I didn't wash the stinking pot. I would have been thinking you didn't wash your stinking pot.
Yeah.
And so, like, it just, like, we were just in such a, like, he felt so supported. I felt so appreciated. What does that do? To the intimacy department.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that there's intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, physical intimacy, recreational intimacy, and financial intimacy. So when you can work on all of those guys, and like, you just build such a firm foundation in your relationship that if something does, you know, if there's a little wrecking ball that hits where, you know, it could be anything. You've got such a big foundation, strong foundation built that you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. You're talking about, what we talk about all the time is your emotional foundation, right? Your emotional, relational foundation, so that you get to a point where you don't have all these reactive patterns. You've replaced them with intentional ones, so that you just navigate and you move through things. You go from an intention to an outcome rather than a reaction to a whole chaos process. Because otherwise you become, without meaning to, you become the people who your identity is that you struggle over the socks. And that identity is showing up in the boardroom. It's showing up in your kid's schoolroom. It is showing up everywhere. And then there's the identity of, you know, the, you know, badass, amazing power couple with the greatest sex life. And how do they do things? And they do things the way that you're describing them.
And it's, yeah, the little things, and they communicate. Yeah. And I also think one other huge thing in couples is, because people are so afraid or feel shame, or it was a taboo topic, or for religious reasons or whatever, they don't discuss their sex lives. People's desires and their wants and their needs, they do not get addressed.
Yeah.
Well, when those don't get addressed, what happens?
You're all about the pot then. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of a little tiny, teeny thing. Like the other night, it was, I was feeling vulnerable, and I just was kind of in a spot. Something had happened earlier in the day, and I just started thinking about it, and I was just kind of in a funny spot. And when you have that strong emotional connection and you know, intimate connection, he looked over and said, "You feeling okay?" And right there, I have two choices to say, "I'm good," or "I'm fine." And we all know what "I'm fine" means.
Yeah.
Or else I could say, "Let down the guard. I'm already feeling vulnerable, so I'm in a little bit of a sensitive spot. Do I allow myself to give into that vulnerability, or do I shut myself off and I'm good? I can handle this on my own." And before, I'd be all good. I don't need to go here because I know where it leads and it never ends well. Or do I realize I'm in a safe place now, Shauna, and I'm going to give into my vulnerability, and let's see where it goes? Because I think the past behaviors of which I have experienced with my husband now have all been so positive. When I allow myself to be vulnerable, I have to remind myself of that. And I said, like this happened today, and I'm just feeling a little bit defeated. And I just need to like sit in my thoughts and my feelings for a minute and process them, and then just let them go, because they don't really serve me. But I just need to sit here for a second.
Yeah, you're like, I'm noticing something and I'm moving through it.
Yeah. And he just jumped over to my side of the couch and gave me a big snuggle. And I'm like, all right, like, I got this.
And I love that because it creates a new pattern. And while you're sharing that, I just keep flashing to, the way in which people are not able to talk about being a person or their needs and wants and desires, because that's been the conditioning, but also because we may mature chronologically, but what's happening is people are emotionally another age. They are their emotional child. So they can be scrappy. We can be scrapping in a couple as if we were like brother and sister or siblings, or, as if you are an 8-year-old. And when you if you were to zoom out, I mean, I have, and it's not very pretty, but it's funny to me. Like, I might as well be like a 10-year-old throwing some tantrum. And, and when you can laugh at it, and fortunately my husband and I, we're like, oh, there's a pattern, and we track it and we make a shift. But it's really very, there's so much it's basically emotional children in adult bodies trying to navigate adult responsibilities and needs and wants and things that are important to a truly high functioning, high performance, healthy life. And so even that thought of like what my mommy told me to say is the child self. Absolutely. Right? When mommy was saying, and guess what? That was also for that timetable and that era where that might have somehow made sense, if at all. And maybe that was from her mommy's era, but it wasn't really completely and totally applicable. And so there's a whole nother thing when you're in your emotional adult self and you're like, what does this emotional adult do? And they just say, hey, I'm having a moment on something, I'm assessing it and I'm working through it. Or they can say, I want this, I want to be with you, I want to snuggle, I want you, and whatever it is, and not have it be a parent-child or child-to-child dynamic. It's really, really powerful. And that's why, again, Shauna, I'm so glad that there are people like you in the world helping people be emotional adults so they can have an emotional adult sex life as well, which is like so amazing. If you don't have that, you're missing out.
Absolutely. And just to be able to learn how to talk about sex, like in my previous marriage, it was not on the table at all. Like not even a smidgen of it. And so when I did my training and sort of evolved as a person and knew, okay, that's not who I want to be, but this is who I want to be. And then when I met my new husband, and he is like, everything is on the table, which is such a huge 180, but it's so amazing.
It's adult.
It's so adult. It's so adult, and it's so refreshing to be able to say anything. Yeah. Like, you know what? I think that how about we try this? And I don't feel uncomfortable or that I'm going to be judged or rejected. And you know what? Like, everybody has a hard line on what is okay or what they want to try or whatever. And I'm not ever suggesting to cross that, because everybody has their own personal boundaries, and I fully respect that. But to be able to talk about them and say, hey, I saw something, or I heard something, or I read something, like, what would you think? Yeah. And just like the majority of people that I work with, when they come into me at first, they would never have that conversation. But by the end, after you intentionally come up with a plan of how can I make this easy to talk about, it's easy to, like, we talk about everything else. Right. Our kids poop, like that. Not going to talk about vaginas and penises. Like, it's such a normal, natural thing. And so to go from, A to B in such a short period of time. And it's nice because I can be the mediator, so to speak, to help it be less awkward and maybe give some scripts of what to say or some, some tips of how to make it not so, it's so much fun, and it's so cool to see them go from A to B.
So, because you're literally, I feel like this with our clients. Our team loves this. Like, we literally feel like their 15-year-old self that's in their 40-year-old man body is like actually becoming that man. And then even, you can be a 40-year-old man, but also have the wisdom of a 200-year-old being if you want. You can be your absolute wisest self at any point. And it really is. You're witnessing this great growth and facilitating it. And it sounds amazing. And I can tell, you're really making a great impact and having a lot of influence on people and their families. And what is especially awesome and inspiring to me, because I do share this in our sessions with people, is if you're not having the highest functioning, amazing sex life that you actually want when you're honest with yourself, you're templating that for your children. And then just another generation is like in their future adult life, but having no idea how to navigate it, and it just keeps reproducing itself. So I love to say to our clients, like, somebody's got to do it. You got to have an amazing sex life because this is what you want for your kids. And so, it's a fun joke that we have, and be like, okay, we're going to be adulting more about it. And so it really is very clear, Shauna, how the work that you're doing is helping the family in that present moment, but also helping these people. It's helping their kids have a much more emotionally, sexually, overall healthy life. And I'm really glad to everything that you got to share with us today. And I really feel a lot of I know the audience is getting all these upgrades and going to be applying them. So a couple of things. First of all, where should everybody go to find you, follow you, and learn from you and look at your services?
Okay. My website is www.exploreintimacy.com. And I'm also on Instagram under that same label or the same handle. So at Explore Intimacy. You can find me on Amazon with my book.
Awesome. Speaking sex. Speaking of sex. I love it. Okay, good. And last question, Shauna. This is the question that everybody answers at the end of the show, which is, if for some weird, bizarre reason, this was the last moment that you were going to be able to give this very important sage advice to people so that they can have the best life possible, what is that advice to them?
If this was the last moment on earth, I think that I would say, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by just stripping it down. And I don't mean clothes. I just mean let go of that guard, let go of that defense mechanism, let go of that shield, because the life that you will create and the relationship that you will create will far surpass anything that you could ever have imagined. And like you said, when your kids see that, like I was brought up with the notion of the best gift that a father can ever give their child is to just love the snot out of their mama. And that is, to me, it means so much more than that to me, because I think when you are, and it doesn't have to be sexual touch, when you're non-sexual touching in the kitchen, you walk by and you snuggle, or you give a kiss on the cheek, or you hug, or you speak with intention and love and all of that kind of stuff, your kids see that. And they are going to mirror that. They are going to talk like that on the playground, whether it be the tone that you use, the body language. They are such sponges. So if we can be the best version of ourselves and realize that I married this one, or I'm in a long-term relationship with this one, this is the one that I chose. We are on the same team, and we're going to get through this together as a team. How can we do that so that the outcome is absolutely like beautiful and better than we ever expected? You just lean into it, and emotions are scary and being vulnerable is scary. I don't care. Do it anyway.
Do it anyway. Shauna, this is one of the greater quotes I've ever heard. So strip it down, right? And what I'm going to add, because I think this is what really everybody wants is if you strip it down, you get to strip it down. You get to strip it down. You get to be yourself, and in every fullest expression of that, and that is just fabulous and wonderful. Thanks for collaborating today. I just invite, the audience here. Thanks for listening to all these perspectives, and I really want everybody to take this into your heart and your mind and your cells and your life and your family, and really implement it so that you can have the most elevated life possible. Until then, we'll see you next time, everyone, and thanks for tuning in again. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.